This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Jeremy Wolf.
Hello, friends, family, wonderful community. Welcome back to another installment of the Good Neighbor Podcast. So I want to frame this episode. Our guest today is a gentleman I met. I've been very proactive on social media lately. If you've been following, I've been posting all sorts of stuff. And one of the things a friend of mine pointed out a while ago, Michael Cuniff, was don't just be a voyeur of social media. If you see something out there that resonates with you, make sure you engage with it. Start having conversations. And that's exactly how I met our guest today. He posted something locally in the community. It really spoke to me in terms of his medical practice and how he's approaching his patient care. This idea of like long-term treating the root cause, right? And addressing the root issues to fix things without quick fixes. And that's really been on my mind lately. So naturally, I commented on the post. Turns out he lives in Cooper City, moved down here recently from, I believe, up north, I think it's Detroit, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And so it's so awesome to meet somebody like that through Facebook that's posted. And then turns out he lives in the community. So I researched his story a little bit further, and I'm going to let him talk about that. But he's been been through some serious life hardships, and that resonated with me also on a deep level. So I said, you know what, man, got to get you on the podcast, learn a little bit about your story, and spread that message with the community. So without further ado, I'm joined here by Dr. Jadan. Dr. Jadan, pleasure having you on, brother. I'm really excited to get into this and learn about your journey. Yeah, man. So what I found is that like it's interesting to learn about what people do, because that's important, what they're doing now. But I think more interesting than that often is how you arrived at what you do, right? Your journey. So why don't we start there? Talk a little bit about your journey that led you into the space that you're operating in today, and then we'll get into more of what you do on a day-to-day.
Absolutely. So I'm a 3-time cancer survivor, 2 times in the brain, which I had a 3rd recurrence as well, but I had 2 brain surgeries back in 2003 and 2006. My first large brain surgery, I had what we call an oligodendroglioma. It's a tumor that mostly older people get. So it's strange that, there's a kid that's 11, 12 years old having this kind of brain tumor. You know what I mean? It was extremely rare. So how they found out was I would have grand mal seizures. I would literally choke on my tongue to the point where I couldn't.
So this was when you were 10, 11? Like you were just a child at this point when you got this?
Just a kid. Okay. Just a kid,
wow.
Yeah. So I would have seizures. I had a hard time learning in school. I had a hard time doing anything. It was hard for me. I would have seizures and, being that young. I mean, kids make fun of you. You're not really, but we're Middle Eastern. So my parents were not very supportive of, of everything. They were just like, you have to listen to your doctors and be strong, blah, blah, blah. I didn't have like the empathy and whatnot that, a kid should have. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
my parents are so old fashioned. Hey, tough it out, be strong, whatever. That's how I was treated. So I had to learn how to fight on my own. I had to learn how to motivate myself to keep going. And that's, that was like, a kind of like a driver for me. So back in 2003, they told me that, I had to undergo brain surgery, and the tumor was in my right temporal lobe, by the way. Thankfully, if you're going to have a tumor, that's the place to have it in the brain, the right temporal lobe. So they went in, they resected it, and it was about
that's a good way to look. That's a positive way to look at it.
Oh yeah. And, they resected the tumor, but it was in the right temporal lobe. So they had to go in and, I have the scar right here. If you want to see
and let me just cut you off there. I'm just curious. Why, if that's the place to have it, why is that the place to have it? What specifically about the right temporal lobe makes it the best place if you're going to have it?
So, you have a left and right temporal lobe. The right temporal lobe does play a role in like facial recognition, word recognition, memory, and a little bit of speech. But, those areas can easily be compensated by other parts of the brain. If you have like damage to the frontal lobe, you're going to have changes to your personality. You know what I mean? So like if it was my frontal lobe, I may not act normal. Do you know what I'm saying? So kind of like back in the day, they used to think because you have anxiety and depression, they would actually remove part of the frontal lobe. This is how it used to be back in the day. But
is that lobotomy?
Yeah, lobotomy. That's what they would do. And they would go in.
No bueno.
Isn't that insane? So they would remove part of the of the frontal lobe, and then the patient would be like a vegetable basically after. They were not normal anymore. They were completely like
nuts,
abnormal. Like, yeah. And they would think that they would treat, like anxiety and depression and OCD and those things by removing part of the frontal lobe, which is not the answer. because that's where, a lot of your personality comes from. So, they call it like a silent part of the brain when it's really not silent. So the brain, though, otherwise, have you heard of neuroplasticity? The brain can rewire connections, and that you want out of the brain. You know what I mean? You want it to do that. And the right temporal lobe is one of those places where, those are things that the brain can rewire. It's not like, hey, it's, permanent damage. When they say you bump your head, those cells are gone. They never regenerate. That's not true. Your brain doesn't regenerate, it rewires. So just because there's damage to the brain doesn't mean the brain can't come back from that kind of damage. Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
So after my surgery, I was paralyzed in the whole left side of my body, and initial surgery. And so what ended up happening was after that surgery, I was paralyzed. I couldn't walk. The left side of my body was shot. So right side of the brain affects the left side of the body and vice versa.
So you were how old at this point when you had the surgery?
Around 11, 12. It was 2003.
So you were, so on top of all the issues that you had leading up to this, now you're in a situation where you're paralyzed, you can't move, and you have to deal with all that. Wow, man.
And I lost, and they had to cut through some of the optic nerve endings, not the entire optic nerve. And so I lost vision in the left peripheral of my left eye and the left peripheral of my right eye. And they told me that would never get better. So I'd be walking and I would bump, if there was something right in like a car, I'd walk right into the car. That's how bad my vision used to be.
Jeez.
So they told me I wouldn't be able to ever, they don't think it was ever going to improve. And, as a kid, I'm like, so you're telling me I got to live like this forever? I'm like, and then, I remember walking out of the doctor's office and I looked at my brother that took me to that appointment and I was like, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. I know that the body can heal and the brain can regenerate. Mm-hmm. So he's like, yeah, I know. I agree. I actually said that inside the doctor's office in front of the staff.
What a deep insight for a kid to have. Right?
I know
about the potential. Like it took me, I'm 46. I'm just now learning how deep and profound the human body's propensity is to heal itself from within, and to have that realization in the face of all this illness with doctors. It's almost like a divine intervention, like you're channeling something deeper to have that realization. That's fascinating, man.
And it was a really tough time in my life. I remember looking at my dad and saying, sorry, Dad. And he'd look at me and be like, what are you sorry about? I'd say, I'm sorry for what I'm putting you through. I'm sorry that, I'm making you go through all this stuff. He's like, are you serious? He's like, I'm your dad. He's like, you don't have to tell me sorry. I'm your dad. I love you. This is my job. I want to make sure you're good. You know what I mean? So make a long story short, I ended up running a half marathon after my surgery. And then I had a recurrence of the brain tumor in 2006. That one I had to have another surgery for because they saw some growth in the tumor. And then they also had me undergo brain radiation as well. Now, 6 weeks after of brain radiation, I ran another marathon a couple days later. So I was like motivated. Yeah, I was like, I don't care. Nothing's going to stop me. This is all in my head. Everything's a mental game. I can do this. I can beat this.
Wow.
And so, I thought my journey was over there. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll never have a recurrence again. Now, this was my driving force. As a kid in undergrad, finishing his bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering, actually. And then I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I had my engineering degree to back me up, whatever. Anyway, so as a kid,
but it was biomedical engineering. So there was always, because of what you went through, there was always this pull towards medicine and biology and the human condition.
So I had
you weren't sure, you were figuring it out, and then
exactly. I was always a nerd, even in high school. I always loved to learn. I was always the smart kid that people used to copy off of. That was always me. In junior high, not so much because I was going through the medical stuff. My brain didn't really heal by then. By the time I was in high school, my brain had healed. So I was back to where I should have been. You know what I mean? So at least not fully, but I was pretty darn close. I was doing great. So anyway, what ended up happening was, I ended up having a recurrence of the brain tumor for the third time. Here I am, 21 years old, almost 22, recurrence of a brain tumor.
And you, by that time, you probably in your rear view mirror, you're like, this is done.
They wanted to do surgery,
and then it just comes back.
Chemo. They wanted to do surgery and chemo on me. And I said, no, I'm not doing this. I'm done. No more surgeries, no more chemo. And, I was old enough to make my own decisions. I wasn't 12. I wasn't 16 anymore. I was like, I'm done. I'm not doing this. My parents were like, you're crazy. What are you doing? You have to listen to your doctors, like, why aren't you listening to your doctors? I'm like, because I'm going to end up dead and I'm going to end up permanently paralyzed and you're going to be taking care of me in a diaper forever. I'm like, I'm not doing that. And so I ended up meeting actually a friend of mine, her name was Renee, actually connected me with someone that was working out of his house. It was a holistic practitioner. He was not a doctor. I went and saw him. He saw me for free. Told me, because I didn't have money at the time. I was, just a kid, just in school. And he gave me these supplements to take. And I bought the supplements. And a few months later, I had my next brain MRI and the tumor was shrinking.
Really?
So that's when I said, wow.
What kind of supplements are we talking about here? I mean, obviously, it's not just that. There's also the mindset component, which I'm sure we'll get into. But what kind of supplements?
Diet, lifestyle. It was a lot of different supplements. There's a really powerful antioxidant I was taking, and it was a whole list of supplements. We're talking about a lot of different things. It's not just one thing that works, right? When you look at the body, it's like putting a puzzle piece back together again. So, anywho, ended up shrinking my tumor. 3 months later, they did MRI. Hallelujah, it's shrinking. And I said, okay, this is what I'm going to go to school for. So I want to learn. So, and then I was also starting at that time, I got bit by a tick and got sick from Lyme disease. And I had a bullseye rash. And I went to my dermatologist. He's like, put that away. It's nothing. So I ended up getting really sick, really, really sick for a long time. And I ended up having to manage it with supplements and vitamins and minerals and whatnot. And that's when I was like, that was like my reassurance when I was starting to feel better doing that. I'm like, okay, then I know I know for a fact I'm going to pursue this because I know what works. I went to conventional medicine. They gave me antibiotics. I felt sick as a dog. I'm like, screw this. I'm going to go the natural route and do this. So I ended up, going to school, finishing school, getting my doctor of naturopathy. And then, I started, clinical and working right away. And anyway, so what ended up happening was I'm not just a doctor that is like, that just learned and treats people. I'm a doctor that studied this and learned it and experienced this firsthand
and lived it.
Yeah. What it feels like to struggle and feel like, and be on the brink of death and feel like you're going to die and come back and then yourself. And
that really gives you a unique perspective and a unique lens when dealing with patients, having walked that walk, right? If you're dealing with a patient that's suffering from a similar type condition where their life is hanging in the balance, the fact that you've been there, you've been in the mud and you fought through it, that gives you an extra level of power on top of the medical component. Yeah,
and it makes you more passionate because if you look at your patient's sick, you're like, wow, like you have empathy towards your patients because you're like, I know
real lived empathy.
You really know. Yeah. It's like someone tells me I have a gut issue, I have cancer, I have autoimmune issue, I have chronic pain. I've been there. I've seen it all. I've been through it all. So it's like, when someone says, hey, I have chronic pain and I treat them and a month later they're feeling amazing. It's like that. I can't believe I did this good and I'm this great now. And it's like, they're thanking me a million times. I've, over 100 reviews. I had more than 150. I know my Google's been deleting reviews randomly, but and I'm 5 stars everywhere. It's like, I love my job and I'm passionate about it. And it's like, even my patients, and after I see them, they can text me if they have questions. And, my wife is also a medical doctor. I'm a naturopathic doctor. We created the Pure RX, our practice, together because now I have the ability to run lab work on my patients. I have the ability to, to even if they need medications refilled and whatnot, I can do that too. And the lab work and the scripts are billable to insurance, by the way, because it's mine and my wife's practice. So, we are able to do that. But consults themselves and supplements, unfortunately, are not billable to insurance.
Yeah, unfortunately, right? Big Pharma doesn't like that.
Exactly.
Damn shame. Yeah. We're all ass backwards in this country when it comes to healthcare. People are always looking. I talk about this all the time. People are looking for the quick fix, right? The pill, the instant gratification. Like, what can I do short term? That's just not how any of this works, right? It requires you got to play the long game. You got to eat right. You got to take care of your body. You got to fix your mind. You got to do all these things. And when you do all these things, you start becoming healthy. Magic, right?
And being in Florida, I moved from Detroit. You have the sun, and the sun is the most powerful healer you'll ever get. When they tell you the sun causes skin cancer, and you look up the relevance of why does Ohio and Florida have the same incidence of skin cancer. It doesn't make sense. It's not. It's non-burning sun exposure. The new research is showing is reducing the risk of like melanoma, for example. It's like the skin cancers are a lot of it's caused from burning, and then they say, oh, but a little bit here and there will cause it. You know what the sun does? If it's improving your immunity, it's your body's going to help to stop that from happening. It's like,
yeah, you get the vitamin D from the sun, all these positive things, right? Like I always make sure. What's that?
Sunscreens are cancer causing. Now,
yeah, right. Like the thing to prevent the cancer from the sun actually gives you the cancer.
Isn't that sad? That's the world we live in. And I mean, not all sunscreens. There are some good ones like mineral sunscreen, zinc oxide. But even then, you got to watch out. What's in there? Parabens? What's in there? Heavy metals? What's in there? It's like, we don't know. It's like there's so many bad things that they're putting in our food and, and things like that too. It's like, I'm happy they're getting rid of food dyes right now. That's a big plus. But it's like, it's like, there's still other things that we have to work on. I mean, hey, go to the store and buy ketchup. What does it have in it? High fructose corn syrup. Parents giving cereal to their kids.
Poison. Yeah.
It's poison. It's all poison.
Yep.
And that's what, that's why it's like people sit there and say, I want to trust the government. I trust them. And, it's like, you can't trust the government. They don't care about you. They really are in it for the money. Let's look at that. Just now the FDA is starting to get cracked down on. When we know that food colors cause ADD, ADHD, they cause cancers, and we know this. It's known facts. And then now they're starting to realize it. What about high fructose corn syrup? What about seed and vegetable oils? What happens with those? Yeah. That's tons of omega-6s, my friend. That's a big reason why we're having an influx of heart disease and obesity. It's the omega-6s. It's a massive overdoses of it.
Yeah, people put too much stock in the government's ability to fix their own problems. Like at some level, you got to take personal responsibility. And it's not that back to what you said about trusting the government. It's not that the people within the government don't want the best for people. Like most people, what I found is they're like not evil people. People want to do good. It's that the government
administration is behind it.
It's the administration. It's the bureaucracy. It's this giant conglomerate where you have all these outside influences pressing on it. And it's so complex that even if people have good intentions inside, it's hard to amplify the pure intentions, especially living in a capitalistic society and an instant gratification society where everybody wants that quick fix and that's that instant result. Yeah. Interesting stuff, man. I want to shift a little bit more. I want you to speak to doctor of naturopathic medicine, right? Like who is your ideal patient? You talked a lot about struggling with like life-threatening illnesses, but like speaking to the general audience out there, like who is the ideal type of patient, somebody that you could really help to? Speak to that person.
So the only two types of medicine are acute and holistic. Emergency and holistic. Emergency and holistic.
AQ? What is it?
No, acute care, like emergency room.
Acute care. Okay.
Yeah. So
AQ.
Emergency room and holistic are the only two types of medicine I believe in.
Okay.
So I treat anyone that's looking to improve their quality of life. If someone has sepsis or pneumonia, I tell them go to the emergency room. Someone has something really severe, a severe illness, go to the ER. But if it's something chronic, let's say you're fatigued, you're tired, I treat cancer patients. I treat patients that have, autoimmune diseases. I treat a lot of chronic conditions. I can't even tell you how many times I've reversed Hashimoto's in patients and helped them live a healthier life. And I've treated, my wife and I would do hormone replacement therapy for women in menopause, if they're in peri or on the way to, on the verge to perimenopause. Then we try to reverse that completely, which it's possible to do that too. Men, even with low testosterone, we can help them too. And, like men with, low libido, any kind of hormonal issues, gut issues, chronic pain, just about everything, memory issues. I've seen it all. I've treated, children with eczema, children with ADD, ADHD. The whole goal here is we try to get to the root cause of the problem. And that's why my initial consults are an hour long.
So I think you mentioned earlier, is this more towards like a DPC, direct primary care model, as opposed to the insurance? Like most people have health insurance and they go see their primary care physician once a year, they get a checkup. Are you leaning more towards like the DPC, like a monthly subscription model, or is it a hybrid?
As of right now, we haven't really incorporated the monthly prescription model. We just charge for consults. The initial is $400. It's an hour. Follow-ups are $150. And normally we have the follow-up, 5 weeks later. And then after that, usually it's every couple months. But we might be switching to the direct primary care pretty soon, just depending on the patient's needs, of course.
Yeah.
That's something that we might be offering here pretty soon.
I mean, it's a wonderful concept, right? Because there's always talk in the news nowadays about this healthcare crisis, and then going back to what the government says about like, oh, just give us more money, we'll throw more money at the problem, and we'll fix it for you, right? It's like, well, no, that's not going to fix the problem. What the government needs to do is incentivize options to take some pressure off the insurance system, and this model where it's like a subscription, like people get buy-in, people build better relationships with their doctor, people could really like put some skin in the game and take care of themselves and take the onus away from the external thing trying to fix them to actually taking personal responsibility. And I think having a good relationship with your healthcare provider and doctor and really getting to know like how your body works and trying to optimize your performance is going to take care of a lot of these symptoms and problems that come up in people's lives.
Exactly. That makes perfect sense. And that's why it's important to treat the body as a whole and not just one piece at a time. Someone says, oh, I have acid reflux. Here, let's take the acid away. That's not the answer.
No, well, what's causing it, right? What's behind that? There's always an explanation deep down.
The problem is lack of acidity. It's actually lack of, your gut needs to be at a pH level of 3 or below. If it's not pH level of 3 or below, your gut's not going to be making the enzymes you need to break down your food. That's why if you take a digestive enzyme, it's going to help you feel better when you have reflux. So the problem is lack of acidity. You've got to make the gut more acidic. That's why apple cider vinegar works when you have reflux for a lot of people. And, so it's like that. And plus, gut bacteria plays a role in making those enzymes as well. So that's why it's important when you treat these things, you have to look here. We got to go from every angle we can. We change your diet. We change your lifestyle. We look at your internal biological clock. How is your sleep? How are you sleeping? Do you have sleep apnea?
So
are you watching TV before bed? Are you eating before bed? Oh, we have to look at everything. This is how you look at the big picture and not just look at one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, man. People make time for what's important, but so many people gloss over the most important thing, which is taking care of themselves, and they just go to like, oh, well, I don't have time to do all these things and do the hard stuff, right? I told to give me a pill, right? But like, you got to do the work to get the results, and you got.
Have you ever heard this saying? You can have 100 problems in your life until you have a health problem. Then you only have one problem.
That becomes the primary focus. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, well, let's leave it at that. I got to jump. Before we go, why don't you let everybody out there know how they could find you? Maybe share whatever your contact number, website, social media hooks. We'll link it in the description, but put it out there.
Sure. My direct line is 586-747-4578. My website is thepurerx.com. THEPURE. RX, R like Robert, X like X-ray.com, thepurerx.com.
Beautiful. Brother, it was a pleasure learning about your story. Really powerful stuff.
Likewise.
Appreciate you coming on. So if you're out there listening, yeah, man, if you're out there listening to this and you're struggling in your life and your health is not where it needs to be, pick up the phone, call Dr. Jadan. Clearly, he has a vested interest in this. He's lived this. He's walked the walk. And he's here to help you. And we're so blessed and grateful to have you here in our great community to help everyone out, man. So truly appreciate your time, brother.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's been wonderful being a part of your podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity. And if anyone just really has struggles in their life and they want to call me and talk to me and have a quick question, I'm happy to do that too. I do this because I'm passionate about it. I just love helping people. So, I'm always here to help.
All right. Sounds good, man. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. As always, if you found this conversation useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, be part of the conversation. You never know what kind of connection you're going to make when you reach out. And that's what I found through social media, through this type of stuff. If something resonates with you, get engaged. You don't know who you're going to touch. You don't know what kind of people you're going to meet. You don't know what kind of impact you might have on the rest of humanity. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast, Cooper City. To nominate your favorite local business to be featured on the show, go to gnpcoopercity.com. That's gnpcoopercity.com or call 954-231-3170.